and welcome back. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Sarah with an H for becoming my newest subscriber. Thank you so much, I really appreciate your taking the time. And now, on with the haul. First up is Johns Hopkins University, and I was able to get one film from their McNaughton Popular Viewing collection, which was Temple Grandin. I was a little bit cautious about this one at first because I really just tend not to like the inspirational biopics that much, especially the ones made for TV. But this had a lot going for it. It had Claire Danes, Julia Ormond, and David Strathairn in the cast, and it was directed by Mick Jackson, who did a few films I really liked, including A Very British Coup, Volcano, and perhaps my all-time favorite fact-based TV movie, which is Live from Baghdad. And this turned out to be pretty good. I wouldn't say, oh my goodness, you have to rush out and see it, but I enjoyed it. And the rest of the Hopkins films are from their regular collection. This, once again, great job, Hopkins intake people, no cover. But this is Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom, which is the last Pasolini film I've ever seen. I now have seen everything Pasolini wrote or directed, with the exception of one film he wrote called The Long Night of 43, which unfortunately I cannot find dubbed or with English subtitles. And I know absolutely no Italian, so it would be pointless for me to try to watch it. But other than that, I've seen everything he's done, and in case you're curious, my top 4 Pasolinis are Oedipus Rex, Medea, Mamma Roma, and one that he wrote but did not direct called Il Bel Antonio. Those are the 4 I most highly recommend, although he's definitely done some other good films as well. I saved this one for last because it's the most polarizing probably of his films. A lot of people love it and think it is just brilliant social commentary. Others hate it and just think it's degrading and almost pornographic. And I have to say, I'm in the middle. To me, it was less of a kind of horror, torture type film than really almost a satire in the sort of Buñuel Renoir vein, except just taken a bunch of notches up. In fact, the one section of Salò reminded me a lot of the segment in Buñuel's The Phantom of Liberty, which is my favorite of his films, which features a bunch of guests seated around a table on chamber pots who have to excuse themselves to go eat. And this particular Pasolini segment just kind of takes that up to a whole new level. I would recommend, if you're interested in it, sort of doing a little research on it and just finding out exactly what you're in for, because, I mean, the subject matter is really not pleasant. But overall, it's not really the kind of thing I would have looked up if I hadn't really loved Pasolini, but it wasn't, the worst film-going experience I've ever had either. Next from Hopkins is another coverless one, The Money Order, or Mandabi, directed by Ousmane Sembène. Sembène is probably the most famous African director out there. He died a couple of years ago, and he was also a novelist. He's from Senegal. And I'm ashamed to say I have never seen any of his films, but this is going to be the first one. And I also got Casque d'Or. This is just one of those classic French films that I really should have seen by now, but haven't. So I'm going to remedy that. And then I got a couple of contemporary films that just looked good to me. East is East, and All the Real Girls. And then from University of Baltimore, I got this film, The Nines, which I most wanted to see just because Hope Davis was in it, and I'm a big fan of hers. And I enjoyed it. It's kind of a mind-bending, what is real, what is not, a bunch of different stories going on. But I liked it. I think I might have liked it more when I was a little younger and hadn't already seen a bunch of films like this. It's a little bit like Cronenberg's Existenz, which I really liked. I guess maybe a little bit like The Matrix, which I wasn't really all that crazy about. But it's pretty well done. I liked it. And from Stevenson, I got Volume 1 of the Harold Lloyd Comedy Collection. Harold Lloyd did his most famous films in the silent era, and he's usually kind of ranked third behind Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton when you're talking about the great silent comedians. But I love him. He's my favorite. I just think Harold Lloyd is just absolutely adorable. And this featured 4 of his feature-length films, as well as some shorts. And my favorite film on this volume was Girl Shy, which is just adorable. It's this man who is completely terrified of women, but decides he's going to write a book about how to be a great Lothario. And so he writes this book and sets off to get it published, and it's just really entertaining and really sweet. And then from the Sights and Sounds department of the Enoch Pratt Free Library, I got Rogopag, which this features the second to last Pasolini film I've ever seen. It was a short film called La Ricotta. This is another anthology film featuring segments directed by Rossellini, Godard, Pasolini, and Gregoretti, hence Rogopag. And as you may recall, the last anthology film I saw that featured Godard and Pasolini was Love and Anger, and I was not exactly taken with that. But this one was pretty good. I didn't love it, honestly, but definitely a step above Love and Anger, and as far as anthology films go, not bad at all. And then I got Le Petit Lieutenant, or The Young Lieutenant. This is a police procedural drama from France, and I tend not to watch a lot of foreign police procedurals and sort of foreign genre films, just because I feel like if I'm going to be going to the trouble of reading the subtitles, honestly, I just feel like I should be watching something really new and different and interesting rather than, more formulaic. But I kept seeing previews for this. This is released by Koch-Lorber Films, which tends to do a lot of really interesting foreign films. And I kept seeing previews for this on other Koch-Lorber discs, and it looked really good. So I decided, what the heck? And it was always, the Pratt Library had 2 copies, and they were both really frequently checked out. Now, I don't know if that means it's good or if that means it's bad, and just people in general tend to like bad movies. But I'm not that far into it. I'm watching it right now, maybe 20 minutes in, and it's good so far, so we'll see. And then I got the Barchester Chronicles. This is based on the series by Anthony Trollope, and if you've seen one of my book hauls, you know that I'm quite the Anthony Trollope fan, and also that I have really strong opinions about this series, or the series of books. I haven't watched this yet. The first book in the series is The Warden, which is Trollope's shortest, or one of his shortest novels, and so it's the one everybody starts with. But then the problem is, The Warden is really boring, and so people read it and they hate Trollope. So if you're going to read this series, I know you're not going to listen to me because The Warden is the first book in the series, and why would you not start with the first book? But I would highly, highly recommend that you start reading with Barchester Towers. You won't really have missed anything, and it is just such a much better book. And the 4 middle books in the series, I think, were the best. Barchester Towers, Dr. Thorne, Framley Parsonage, and The Small House at Allington. While the last Chronicle of Barset kind of wraps it up, but I mean, the main story is this whole thing about a guy who loses a check, but he's too proud, and so people accuse him of stealing it, but he's too proud to defend himself, and it just goes on and on and on for like 900 pages. But you kind of have to read it if you want to know how some of the other threads turn out. But anyway, I'm eager to see what they've done with this. So looking forward to watching this. It's about 7 hours, so I hope it's good. And normally, this would be where I end my haul, because I do the Pratt last, and I usually go with the made-for-TV Masterpiece Theater thing last. But this is really exciting. I've mentioned my favorite Sights and Sounds librarian occasionally. And it's not that the other Sights and Sounds librarians are bad or anything, it's just this particular librarian and I have kind of similar taste. And he came up to me while I was browsing, and he said, basically, you like cool movies, why don't you take a look at this? And he lent me this DVD from his personal collection, which is called $9.99, and it's based on stories by Edgar Keret, and it's an animated film, and I just watched it this morning, and I really, really liked it. It's kind of a quirky slice of life comedy drama, really entertaining. So I look forward to seeing what else he has in his collection that he's willing to lend. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me for my next video.